Alright, today I'll talk about Fantastic Four First Steps. So, Fantastic Four First Steps is actually our introduction to the Marvel's first family in the MCU, the Fantastic Four. Now, they are played by Pedro Pascal as Reed Richards, Vanessa Kirby as Sue Storm, Joseph Quinn as Human Torch, and The Thing. Yes, these are all new cast, and I'm fine with it, You have to introduce them in a new way. And for their introduction, instantly I fell in love with the world, because this is not your regular MCU world. This is a different Earth. It takes place in a futuristic 1960s, and when you look at the world, it is very much different than the regular MCU world that we are pretty much used to seeing. Now, in this film, the Fantastic Four must face a Galactus, the devourer of worlds. In this movie, Galactus wants Reed Richards' son, Franklin Richards, because if you've read the comics or know anything about Franklin Richards, once Franklin Richards gets older, this kid is super powerful. So, the Galactus wants to stop that from happening. And now let's get into the specifics. How are our four main characters being played here? I'll start with someone that I really like, and that is Human Torch, played by Joseph Quinn. When I first heard of this casting, I was skeptical, alright? Because I'm used to seeing the Chris Evans version of Human Torch. But after seeing his performance in this movie, Joseph Quinn is easily the standout from all four of them, because this man embodies Human Torch. He gets the funny side, the intelligent side, and also along the way, he tries to sacrifice himself 3 times to save the Fantastic Four, and you feel that he wants to be a hero, even though if it means sacrificing himself. That puts him high up to the list comparing to the other 3 Fantastic Four. So, the best character, the best crew of this team right now as it stands for me is Human Torch. Now, what about Reed Richards? Well, I knew that Pedro Pascal was not the first choice to play Reed Richards, but he gets casted, and after seeing his performance, he tries his best to portray Reed Richards, but I still think that he is quite miscasted in this role. Reed Richards is supposed to be the smartest man in the MCU, but for some reason, when you're watching his performance, you don't feel that yet. Yes, he is intelligent, but not as intelligent as in the comics. I don't know, maybe once we get to Doomsday, his character progresses into the smartest man in the MCU. But right now, I feel like he could have been played by somebody else. The easiest way I can put it is that Pedro Pascal here plays an emotional version of Reed Richards, but when you compare him to the comic counterpart, he plays a regular version of Reed Richards. And I was kind of disappointed by how they use his powers in this one, because the way they utilize his powers is kind of an afterthought. It felt like an afterthought because he barely uses any powers in the movie, and some people would argue that yes, he doesn't use the powers often, but it trades it with his intellect. But when you see his performance here, he doesn't come across as that kind of intellect, the smartest man in the MCU. No, you don't see that, at least right now. So yes, I can kind of say that Pedro Pascal, while he still delivers an emotional performance as Reed Richards, he was not my first choice as Reed Richards. Now, what about Sue Storm? She is the heart of the family. Alright? The emotional toll, all of it comes from her. And you as an audience, you feel that desperation because in the first act of the movie, the Fantastic Four gets beaten easily. They need to escape Galactus. Alright? And the speedster escape action sequence was phenomenal. It was something else. It is the best action scene in the movie. Alright? But getting back to Sue Storm, yes, she is the heart of the family, and you feel that. And you feel her desperation trying to save the people in the city. Alright? And that deals with the dark tone that this film has. And it's that, Galactus is coming over to devour Earth. So the Fantastic Four doesn't have a lot of time to figure out a plan. And you feel that. As the people, you feel desperate. You feel their desperation. Alright? That is the darker tone that this film has. And yeah, the tone really fits the movie. Now, what about the other member, the Thing? I have very little thing to say about the Thing, He really doesn't do a lot of things in this movie other than smashing buildings and saving people, and that's pretty much it for the Thing. That being said though, I really like the Thing's design in this one because they're very much going after the comic accurate look. You see the Thing, yes, this is the most accurate the Thing ever put to screen. Alright, I like the design. And what about the villain, Galactus? Well, his design is amazing and his performance is menacing as hell. But here's the thing. In the movie, he only has 2 scenes. The speedster escape, his first encounter with the Fantastic Four, and then he shows up later in the movie to, be the final boss of the movie. And that's it. And even when the final boss happens, there's nothing much at stake here. Reed Richards is trying to save the baby, Franklin Richards, but that's it. Galactus didn't do a lot of things in the movie, even though his character is menacing, his character is cool, but I feel disappointed with his character because of how they're using his character, and he just shows up 2 times in the movie. I feel like that is such a missed opportunity. But then there's another character, Silver Surfer, played by Julia Gardner, and she is the standout, even though she is in the movie for a reasonable amount of time. Especially the things with her and Johnny Storm really works, and it leads to some funny moments and flirty dialogues and stuff. But her performance in this movie is amazing. Alright? And the one action sequence that she was involved in, the speedster chase, that was the best action scene in the movie. That being said, there aren't a lot of action sequences in the movie. There's like 3 action sequences, and to some degree, I get it. Okay, they're not superheroes like Iron Man or something like that, or Spider-Man. No, they are space explorers. But at least give us 1 or 2 more action sequences to keep the pacing intact. Because while I was watching this movie, there are some moments that I felt like, okay, this is dragging a little bit. You feel the pacing, even though this movie is below 2 hours. It's like 1 hour and 45 minutes, but somehow it feels long. It feels longer than that. That is my number 1 issue. The pacing is way off. Particularly the first act is so slow. When you get into the second act, things speed up a little bit and the speeder chase happens, and it really makes up for it. When you get into the third act, with the final boss against Galactus, when it's all over, you get that feeling of, okay, that's it. It gets over pretty quick. I'm telling you. The final boss is so quick, so simple, but it lacks the punch, the final punch. When you put it in short, this film lacks action sequences. Now, there's another positive thing that I have for this film, and that is, this film is not connected to anything else. As if right now, they're eventually gonna cross over with the Avengers in Doomsday, but as if right now, as it stands, it really feels standalone. And when you're watching this, you can just jump in without watching anything MCU whatsoever, and that feeling of the standalone thing is quite rare nowadays, because when you're watching the MCU movies, the MCU shows, it felt like homework. But when you're watching this movie, this standalone thing, it felt like, you don't need to do anything. You don't need to watch anything prior to this, and you just jump in and enjoy the ride. That is a quite rare feeling that I have while watching this film. So, I will give Fantastic Four First Steps a 6 out of 10. To put it in short, this is an underwhelming movie. Alright? I didn't expect much from a Fantastic Four movie, but then again, this film, I felt like it was very underwhelming. It lacks action. The family dynamic is so strong though. That is the core of the movie. But other than that, Galactus was underpowered, and Silver Surfer just has a little bit sequences here and there with Johnny Storm that could have been more fleshed out. So, to put it in short, this film feels underwhelming for me. 6 out of 10. And if you have seen Fantastic Four First Steps, tell me everything you like, everything you don't like, and which versions that you like the most. This MCU version or the classic Fox movies. Don't even mention the fan forced it. Alright? That's out of the competition. But when you compare these two versions, which one do you like the most? Drop it everything in the comment section down below, and see you on the next video.